11. Midnight then, and the town clocks chiming on toward 1 and 2 and 3 in the deep morning, and the peals of the great clocks shaking dust off old toys in high attics and shedding silver off old mirrors, and yet higher attics, and stirring up dreams about clocks and all the beds where children slept. Will heard it, muffled away in the prairie lands, and the chuffing of an engine, the slow following dragon glide of a train. Will sat up in bed. Across the way, like a mirror image, Jim sat up too. A calliope began to play oh so softly, grieving to itself a million miles away. In one single motion, Will leaned from his window, as did Jim. Without a word they gazed over the trembling surf of the trees. Their rooms were high as boys' rooms should be. From these gaunt windows they could rifle fire their gaze artillery distances past library, city hall, depot, cow barns, farmlands, to empty prairie. There on the world's rim the lovely sail gleam of the railway tracks ran, flinging wild gesticulations of lemon or cherry-colored semaphore to the stars. There on the precipice of earth a small steam feather uprose like the first of storm cloud yet to come. The train itself appeared link by link, engine, coal car, and numerous and numbered, all asleep and slumbering dream-filled cars that followed the firefly's sparked chant. Drowsy autumn heathfire Hearthfire roar. Hellfires flushed the stunned hills. Even at this remote view one imagined men with buffalo hunched arms, shoveling black meteor falls of coal into the open boilers of the engine. The engine! Both boys vanished, came back to lit binoculars. The engine! Civil War, no other stack like that since 1900. The rest of the train, all of it's old. The flags, the cages, it's the carnival. They listened. At first Will thought he heard the air whistling fast in his nostrils, but no, it was a train. And the calliope singing, weeping, on that train. Sounds like church music. Hell, why would a carnival play church music? Don't say hell, hissed Will. Hell, Jim ferociously leaned out. I've stayed up all day, everyone's asleep, so hell! The music drifted by their windows. Goose pimples rose big as boils on Will's arms. That is church music. Changed. For cry I unfroze. Let's go watch them set up. At 3 a.m.? At 3 a.m., Jim finished. For a moment Will watched Jim dance over there, shirt uplifted, pants going on, while off in night country, panting, churning, was this funeral train, all black, plumed cars, licorice-colored cages, and a sooty calliope clamoring, banging 3 different hymns mixed and lost, maybe not there at all. Here goes nothing. Jim slid down the drain pipe on his house toward the sleeping yawns. Jim, wait! Will thrashed into his clothes. Jim, don't go alone, and followed after. 12. Sometimes you see a kite so high, so wise, it almost knows the wind. It travels, then chooses to land in one spot and no other. No matter how you yank, run this way or that, it will simply break its cord, seek its resting place, and bring you blood-mouthed running. Jim, wait for me! So now Jim was the kite, the wild twine cut, and whatever wisdom was taking him away from Will, who could only run earthbound after one so high and dark, silent, and suddenly strange. Jim, here I come, and running, Will thought. Boy, it's the same old thing. I talk, Jim runs, I tilt stones, Jim grabs the cold junk under the stones, and lickety-split I climb hills, Jim yells off church steeples. I got a bank account, Jim's got the hair on his head, I yell in his mouth, the shirt on his back, and the tennis shoes on his feet. How come I think he's richer? Because, Will thought, I sit on a rock in the sun, and old Jim, he prickles his arm hairs by moonlight and dances with hop-toads. I tend cows, Jim tames Gia monsters. Fool, I yell at Jim. Coward, he yells back, and here we go. And they ran from town across the field, and both froze under the rail bridge with the moon ruddy beyond the hills and the meadows trembling with a fur of dew. Wham! The carnival train thundered the bridge. The calliope wailed. There's no one playing it, Jim started up. Jim, no jokes. Mother's honor, look. Going away, the calliope pipes shimmered with star explosions, but no one sat at the high keyboard. The wind, sluicing ice-water air in the pipes, made the music. The boys ran. The train curved away, gonging its undersea funeral bell, sunk, rusted, green moss, tolling. Then the engine whistle blew a great steam whiff, and Will broke out in pearls of ice. Way late at night, Will had heard, how often, train whistles, jetting steam along the rim of sleep, forlorn, alone and far, no matter how near they came. Sometimes he woke to find tears on his cheek, asked why, lay back, listened and thought, yes, they make me cry, going east, going west, the trains have far gone in country deeps, they drown in tides of sleep that escape the towns. Those trains and their grieving sounds were lost forever between stations, not remembering where they had been, not guessing where they might go, exhaling their last pale breaths over the horizon, gone. So it was with all the trains, ever. Yes, this train's whistle. The wails of a lifetime were gathered in it from other nights and other slumbering years, the howl of moon-dreamed dogs, the seep of river-cold winds through January porch screens, which stopped the blood. 1,000 fire sirens weeping, or worse, the outgone shreds of breath, the protests of a billion people dead or dying, not wanting to be dead, their groans, their sighs burst over the earth. Tears jumped to Will's eyes. He lurched. He knelt. He pretended to lace one shoe. But then he saw Jim's hands clap his ears, his eyes wet, too. The whistle screamed. Jim screamed against the scream. The whistle shrieked. Will shrieked against the shriek. Then the billion voices ceased instantly, as if the train had plunged in a firestorm off the earth. The train skimmed on softly, slithering, black pennants fluttering, black confetti lost on its own 6-week handy wind, down the hill, and the boys pursuing, the air so cold they ate ice cream with each breath. They climbed a last rise to look down. "Boy," whispered Jim. The train had pulled off into Rolf's Moon Meadow, so called because the town couples came out to see the moon rise here, over a land so wide, so long, it was like an inland sea, filled with grass in spring, so hay in late summer or snow in winter. It was fine walking here along its crisp shore, with the moon coming up to tremble on its tides. While the carnival train was crouched there now, in the autumn grass on the old rail spur near the woods, and the boys crept and lay down under a bush waiting. "It's so quiet," whispered Will. The train just stood in the middle of the dry autumn field, no one in the locomotive, no one in the tender, no one in any of the cars behind, all black under the moon, and just the small sounds of its metal cooling ticking on the rails. "Sst," said Jim. "I feel them moving in there." Will felt the cat fuzz on his body bramble up by the thousands. "You think they mind us watching?" "Maybe," said Jim happily. "Then why the noisy calliope?" "When I figure that," Jim smiled, "I'll tell you. Look, whisper." As if exhaling itself straight down from the sky, a vast moss-green balloon touched at the moon. It hovered 200 yards above and away, quietly riding the wind. "The basket under the balloon, someone in it." But then a tall man stepped down from the train caboose platform like a captain essaying the tidal weathers of his inland sea. All dark suit, shadow-faced, he wadded to the center of the meadow. His shirt as black as the gloved hands he now stretched to the sky. He gestured once, and the train came to life. At first a head lifted in one window, then an arm, then another head like a puppet in a marionette theater. Suddenly 2 men in black were carrying a dark tent pole out across the hissing grass. It was the silence that made Will pull back, even as Jim leaned forward, eyes moon-bright. A carnival should be all growls, roars like timberlands, stacked, bundled, rolled, crashed, great explosions of lion dust, men ablaze with working anger, pop bottles jangling, horse buckles shivering, engines and elephants in full stampede through rains of sweat, and zebras neighed and trembled like cage trapped in cage. But this was like old movies, the silent theater haunted with black and white ghosts, silvery mouths opening to let moonlight smoke out, gestures made in silence so hushed you could hear the wind fuzz the hair on your cheeks. More shadows rustled from the train, passing the animal cages where darkness prowled with unlit eyes, and the calliope stood mute save for the faintest idiot-tuned breeze piped wandering up the flues. The ringmaster stood in the middle of the land. The balloon, like a vast moldy green cheese, stood fixed to the sky. Then darkness came. The last thing Will saw was the balloon sweeping down as clouds covered the moon. In the night he felt the men rush to unseen tanks. He sensed the balloon like a great fat spider fiddling with the lines and poles, rearing a tapestry in the sky. The clouds arose. The balloon sifted up. In the meadows stood the skeleton main poles and wires of the main tent, waiting for its canvas skin. More clouds poured over the white moon. Shadowed, Will shivered. He heard Jim crawling forward, seized his ankle, felt him stiffen. "Wait," said Will. "They're bringing out the canvas." "No," said Jim. "Oh, no, for someone's instead." They both knew the wires high flung on the poles were catching swift clouds, ripping them free from the wind streamers, which, stitched and sewn by some great monster shadow, made canvas and more canvas as the tent took shape. At last there was a clear water sound of vast flags blowing. The motion stopped. The darkness within darkness was still. Will lay, eyes shut, hearing the beat of the great oil-black wings as if huge ancient bird had drummed down to live, to breathe, to survive in the night meadow. The clouds blew away. The balloon was gone. The men were gone. The tents rippled like black rain on their poles. Suddenly it seemed a long way to town. Instinctively Will glanced behind himself. Nothing but grass and whispers. Slowly he looked back at the silent, dark, seemingly empty tents. "I don't like it," he said. Jim could not tear his eyes away. "Yeah," he whispered, "yeah." Will stood up. Jim lay on the earth. "Jim," said Will. Jim jerked his head as if slapped. He was on his knees. He swayed up. His body turned, but his eyes were fastened to those black flags, the great sideshow signs, swarming with unguessed wings, horns, and demon smiles. A bird screamed. Jim jumped. Jim gasped. Cloud shadows panicked them over the hills to the edge of town. From there the two boys ran alone. 13. The air was cold, blowing in through the wide-open library window. Charles Holloway had stood there for a long time. Now he quickened. Along the street below fled two shadows, two boys above them, matching shadow stride for stride. They softly printed the night air with treads. "Jim!" cried the old man. "Will!" but not aloud. The boys went away toward home. Charles Holloway looked out into the country, wandering alone in the library, letting his broom tell him things no one else could hear. He had heard the whistle and the disjointed calliope hymns. 3, he now said half aloud. 3 in the morning. In the meadow, the tents, the carnival waited for someone, anyone, to wade through the grassy surf. The great tents spilled like bellows. They softly issued forth exhalations of air that smelled like ancient yellow beasts. But only the moon looked in at the hollow dark, the deep caverns. Outside, night beasts hung in mid-gallop on a carousel. Beyond lay fathoms of mirror maze, which housed a multifold series of empty vanities, one wave upon another, still serene, silvered with age, white with time. Any shadow at the entrance might stir reverberations the color of fright, unravel deep-buried moons. If a man stood here, would he see himself unfolded away a billion times to eternity? Would a billion images look back, each face the face after the face, and after that, old, older, oldest? Would he find himself lost in a fine dust, away off, deep down there? Not 50, but 60, not 60, but 70, not 70, but 80, 90, 99 years old? The maze did not ask. The maze did not tell. It simply stood and waited like a great arctic flow. 3 o'clock. Charles Holloway was cold. His skin was suddenly a lizard's skin. His stomach, filled with blood, turned to rust. His mouth tasted of night damps. Yet he could not turn from his library window. Far off, something glittered in the meadow. It was moonlight flashing on a great glass. Perhaps the light said something, perhaps a spoken code. "I'll go there," thought Charles Holloway. "I won't go there. I like it," he thought. "I don't like it." A moment later, the library door slammed. Going home, he passed the empty store window. Inside stood 2 abandoned sawhorses. Between lay a pool of water. In the water floated a few shards of ice. In the ice were a few long strands of hair. Charles Holloway saw, but chose not to see. He turned and was gone. The street was soon as empty as the hardware store window. Far away in the meadow, shadows flickered in the mirror maze, as if parts of someone's life yet unborn were trapped there, waiting to be lived. So the maze waited, its cold gaze ready for so much as a bird to come look, see, and fly away shrieking. But no bird came. 14. 3, a voice said. Will listened, cold but warming, glad to be in with a roof above, floor below, wall and door between. Too much exposure, too much freedom, too much night. 3, Dad's voice, home now, moving down the hall, speaking to itself. 3. Why, thought Will, that's when the train came. Had Dad seen, heard, followed? No, he mustn't, Will hutched himself. Why not? He trembled. What did he fear? The carnival rushing in like a black stampede of storm waves on the shore out beyond? Of him and Jim and Dad knowing, of both the town asleep not knowing? Was that it? Yes, Will buried himself deep. Yes. 3. 3 in the morning, thought Charles Holloway, seated on the edge of his bed. Why did the train come at that hour? 4, he thought, it's a special hour. Women never wake then, do they? They sleep the sleep of babes and children, but men in middle age, they know that hour well. Oh God, midnight's not bad. You wake and go back to sleep. 1 or 2's not bad. You toss but sleep again. 5 or 6 in the morning, there's hope, for dawn's just under the horizon. But 3 a.m. Doctors say that the body's at low tide then. The soul is out. The blood moves slow. You're the nearest to dead you'll ever be, save dying. Sleep is a patch of death, but 3 in the morn. Full wide-eyed staring is living death. You dream with your eyes open. God, if you have strength to rouse up, you'd slaughter your half-dreams with buckshot. But no, you lie pinned to a deep well bottom that's burned dry. The moon rolls by to look at you down there with its idiot face. It's a long way back to sunset, a far way on to dawn. So you summon all the fool things of your life, the stupid lovely things done with people known so very well, who are now so very dead. And wasn't it true? Had he read it somewhere? More people in the hospitals die at 3 a.m. than at any other time? Stop, he cried silently. Charlie, his wife said in her sleep. Slowly he took off the other shoe. His wife smiled in her sleep. Why? She's immortal. She has a son. Your son, too. But what father ever really believes it? He carries no burden. He feels no pain. What man, like woman, lies down in darkness and gets up with child? The gentle, smiling ones own the good secret. Oh, what strange, wonderful clocks women are. They nest in time. They make the flesh that holds fast and bides eternity. They live inside the gift, no power accept, and need not mention it. Why speak of time when you are time, and shape in universal moments as they pass into warmth and action? How men envy and others hate these warm clocks, these wives, who know they will live forever. So what do? We men turn terribly mean, because we can't hold to the world ourselves or anything. We are blind to continuity. All breaks down, falls, melts, stops, rots, or runs away. Since we cannot escape time, Where does that leave men? Sleepless, staring. 3 a.m., that's our reward. 3 in the morn. That soul's midnight. The tide goes out, the soul ebbs, and a train arrives at that hour of despair. Why? Charlie? His wife's hand moved to his. You all right, Charlie? She drowsed. He did not answer. He could not tell her how he was. 15. The sun rose yellow as a lemon. The sky was round and blue. The birds looped clear water songs in the air. Will and Jim leaned forward from their windows. Nothing had changed except the looks in Jim's eyes. Last night, said Will, did or didn't happen. They both gazed toward the far meadows. The air was sweet as syrup. They could find no shadows anywhere, even under the trees. 6 minutes, cried Jim. 5. 4 minutes later, cornflakes lurching in their stomachs, they frisked the leaves to a fine red dust, going out of town. With a wild flutter of breath, they raised their eyes from the earth they had been treading, and the carnival was there. Hey! For the tints were living like the sun, brass like wheat fields a few weeks ago, flags and banners bright as bluebirds snapped above lion-colored canvas. From booths painted cotton candy colors, fine Saturday smells of bacon and eggs, hot dogs and pancakes swam the wind. Everywhere ran boys, everywhere sleepy fathers followed. It's just a plain old carnival, said Will. Like heck, said Jim. We weren't blind last night. Come on. They marched 100 yards straight on and deep into the midway. And the deeper they went, the more obvious it became they would find no nightmen cat-treading balloon shadow, while strange tints plumed like thunderclouds. Instead, close up, the carnival was mildewed rope, moth-eaten canvas, rain-worn, sun-bleached tinsel. The sideshow paintings hung like sad albatrosses on their poles, flapped and let fall flakes of ancient paint, shivering and at the same time revealing the unwondrous wonders of a thin man, fat man, needlehead, tattooed man, hula dancer. They prowled on, but found no mysterious midnight spheres of evil gas tied by mysterious oriental knots to draggers plunged in dark earth, no maniac ticket-takers bent on terrible revenges. The calliope by the ticket booth neither screamed deaths nor hummed idiot songs to itself. The train pulled off on a spur in the warming grass. It was old, yes, and welded tight with rust, but it looked like a titanic magnet that had collected to itself from locomotive boneyards across 3 continents, dive shafts, flywheels, smokestacks, and hand-me-down second-rate nightmares. It did not cut a black and mortuary silhouette. It asked permission but to lie dead in autumn stewings, so much tired steam and iron gunpowder blowing away. Jim, Will! Here came Miss Foley, their 7th-grade school-teacher, along the midway, all smiles. Boys, she said, what's wrong? You look as if you lost something. Well, said Will, last night did you hear the calliope? Calliope, no. Then why are you out here so early, Miss Foley? Asked Jim. I love carnivals, said Miss Foley, a little woman lost somewhere in her gray 50s, beaming around. I'll buy hot dogs, and you eat while I look for my fool nephew. Has you seen him? Nephew? Robert, staying with me a few weeks. Father's dead, mother's sick in Wisconsin. I took him in. He ran out here early today, said he'd meet me. But you know, boys, you look glum. She shoved food at them. Eat, cheer up. Rides will open in 10 minutes. Meantime, I think I'll spy through that mirror maze and... No, said Will. No what? Asked Miss Foley. No mirror maze. Will swallowed. He stared at fathoms of reflections. You could never strike bottom there. It was like winter standing tall, waiting to kill you with a glance. Miss Foley, he said at last, and wondered to hear his mouth say it. Don't go in there. Why not? Jim peered fascinated into Will's face. Yeah, tell us, why not? People get lost, said Will lamely. All the more reason. Robert might be wandering loose and not find his way out if I don't grab his ear. Never can tell. Will could not take his eyes off the millions of miles of blind glass. What might be swimming around in there? Swimming? Miss Foley laughed. What a lovely mind you have, Willie. Well, yes, but I'm an old fish, so... Miss Foley. Miss Foley waved, poised, took a step, and vanished into the mirror ocean. They watched as she settled, wandered, sank deep, was finally dissolved, gray among silver. Jim grabbed Will. What was all that? Gosh, Jim, it's the mirrors. They're the only things I don't like. I mean, they're the only things like last night. Boy, you've been out in the sun, snored Jim. That maze there is. His voice trailed off. He sniffed the cold air blowing out as from ice house between the tall reflections. Jim, you were saying? But Jim said nothing. After a long time he clapped his hand to the back of his neck. It really does, he cried in a soft amaze. What does? Hair. I read it all my life. In scary stories it stands on end. Mine's doing it now. Gosh, Jim, so's mine. They stood entranced with the delicious cold bumps on their necks, and suddenly stiffened small hairs quilled up over their scalps. There was a flourish of light and shadow. Bumping out through the mirror maze, they saw 2, 4, a dozen Miss Foleys. They didn't know which one was real, so they waved to all of them. But none of the Miss Foleys saw or waved back. Blind she walked. Blind she tacked her nails to cold glass. Miss Foley! Her eyes flexed wide as from blasts of photographic powder. were skinned white like a statue's. Deep under the glass she spoke, she murmured, she whimpered. Now she cried, now she shouted, now she yelled. She knocked glass with her head, her elbows tilted drunken as a light-blind moth, raised her hands and claws. "Oh, God, help!" she wailed. "Help! Oh, God!" Jim and Will saw their own faces pale, their own eyes wide in the mirrors as they plunged. "Miss Polly, here!" Jim cracked his brow. "This way," but Will found only cold glass. A hand flew from empty space, an old woman's hand. Sinking for the last time, it seized anything to save itself. The anything was Will. She pulled him under. "Will! Jim! Jim!" And Jim held him, and he held her, and pulled her free of the silently rushing mirrors, coming in from the desolate seas. They stepped into sunlight. Miss Polly, one hand to her bruised cheek, bleated, murmured, then laughed quickly, then gasped, then wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Will, Jim, oh, thank you. I'd have drowned. Oh, Will, you were right. My God, did you see her? She's lost, drowned in there. Poor girl. Oh, the poor lost sweet. Save her. Oh, we must save her. Miss Polly, boy, you're hurting." Will firmly removed her fist from clenching the flesh of his arm. "There's no one in there. I saw her. Please look. Save her." Will jumped to the maze entrance and stopped. The ticket taker gave him an idle glance of contempt. Will backed away to Miss Polly. "I swear no one went in ahead after you, ma'am. It's my fault. I joked about the water. You must have got mixed up, lost, scared. But if she heard," she went on biting the back of her hand, her voice the voice of someone come out of the sea after no air, a long dread time deep, no hope of life, and now set free. "Gone! She's at the bottom, poor girl. I knew her. I know you, I said when I first saw her a minute ago. I waved, she waved, hello, I ran, bang, I fell, she fell, a dozen, a thousands of her fell. Wait, I said. Oh, she looked so fine, so lovely, so young, but it scared me. What are you doing here? I said. Why, I think she said, I'm real, you're not. She laughed way under the water. She ran off in the maze. We must find her before... Miss Polly, Will's arm around her, took a last trembling breath and grew strangely quiet. Jim was staring deep into those cold mirrors, looking for sharks that could not be seen. Miss Polly, he said, what did she look like? Miss Polly's voice was pale but calm. The fact is, she looked like myself many, many years ago. I'll go home now, she said. Miss Polly will... No, stay. I'm just fine. Have fun, boys. Enjoy. And she walked slowly away alone down the midway, somewhere a vast animal made water. Ammonia made the wind turn ancient as it passed. I'm leaving, said Will. Will, said Jim. We're staying until sundown. Boy, dark sundown, and figure it all. You chicken? No, murmured Will. But anybody want to dive back in that maze? Jim gazed fiercely deep into the bottomless sea, where now only the pure light glanced back at itself, held up emptiness upon emptiness beyond emptiness before their eyes. Nobody, Jim let his heart beat twice. I guess. "16. A bad thing happened at sunset. Jim vanished. Though noon and afternoon, they had screamed up half the rides, knocked over dirty milk bottles, smashed Cupid doll, winning plates, smelling, listening, looking their way through the autumn crowd, trampling the leafy sawdust, and then quite suddenly Jim was gone. And Will, not asking anyone but himself, absolutely silent, certain sure, walked steadily through the late crowd as the sky was turning plum-colored until he came to the maze and paid his dime and stepped up inside and called softly just one time, Jim? And Jim was there, half in, half out of the cold glass tides, like someone abandoned on a seashore when a close brain had gone far out. And there is a wonder if he will ever come back. Jim stood as if he had not moved so much as an eyelash in 5 minutes, staring, his mouth half open, waiting for the next wave to come in and show him more. Jim, get out of there! Will, Jim sighed faintly, let me be. Like heck! With one leap, Will grabbed Jim's belt and hauled. Shuffling backward, Jim did not seem to know he was being dragged for the maze, for he kept protesting in awe at some unseen wonder. Oh, Will! Oh, Willie, Will! Oh, Willie! Jim, you know, I'm taking you home. What? They were in cold air. The sky was darker than plums now, with a few clouds burning late sunfire above. The sunfire flamed on Jim's feverish cheeks, his open lips, his wide and terribly rich green shining eyes. Jim, what'd you see in there? The same as Miss Polly? What? I'm gonna bust your nose. Come on. He hustled, pulled, shoved, half carried his speaker, this elation, this unstruggling friend. Can't tell you, Will. We wouldn't believe. Can't tell you. In there. Oh, and there. Shut up, Will socked his arm. Scare the heck out of me, just like she scared us. Bugs, it's almost supper time. Folks'll think we're dead and buried. They were striding now, slushing the autumn grass with their shoes beyond the tents in the hay-smelling, leaf-mold fields. Will glaring at the town. Jim staring back at the high, now darkening banners as the last of the sun hid under the earth. Will, we gotta come back tonight. Okay, come back alone. Jim stopped. You wouldn't let me come alone. You're always going to be around, aren't you, Will, to protect me? Look who needs protection. Will laughed, and then did not laugh again, for Jim was looking at him, the last wild light dying in his mouth, and caught in the thin hollows of his nostrils and in his suddenly deep-set eyes. "You'll always be with me, huh, Will?" Jim simply breathed warm upon him, and blood stirred with the old familiar answers. "Yes, yes, you know it, yes, yes." And turning together, they stumbled over the clanking dark mound of leather bag. 17. They stood for a long moment over the huge leather bag. Almost secretively, Will kicked it. It made a sound of iron indigestion. "Why," said Will, "that belongs to the lightning rod salesman." Jim slipped his hand through the leather mouth and hefted forth a metal shaft clustered with chimeras, Chinese dragons, all fang, eyeball, and moss green armor, all cross and crescent, every symbol around the world that make men safe, or seemed to, clung here, greeting the boy's hands with odd weight and meaning. Storm never came, but he went. Where and why did he leave his bag? They both looked to the carnival, where dusk colored the canvas billows. Shadows ran coolly out to engulf them. People in cars honked home in tired commotions. Boys on skeleton bikes whistled dogs after. Soon night would own the midway, while shadows rode the Ferris wheel up to cloud the stars. "People," said Jim, "don't leave their whole life lying around. This is everything that old man owned. Something important," Jim breathed soft fire, "made him forget, so he just walked off and left this here." "What? What's so important you forget everything?" "Why," Jim examined his hand, "you find out..." Curiously, twilight in his face. "No one can tell you. You find out yourself. Mysteries and mysteries. Storm salesman's bag. If we don't look now, we might never know. Jim, in 10 minutes, sure, Midway will be dark, everyone home for dinner. Just us alone, but won't it feel great, just us? And here we go, back in." Passing the mirror maze, they saw 2 armies, a billion Jims, a billion Wills, collide, melt, vanish, and like those armies, so vanished the real army, people. The boys stood alone among the encampments of dusk, thinking of all the boys in town, sitting down to warm food in bright rooms. 18. The red-lettered signs said, "Out of order, keep off." Signs been up all day. "I don't believe signs," said Jim. They peered in at the merry-go-round, which lay under a dry rattle and roar of wind-tumbled oak trees. Its horses, goats, antelope, zebras, speared through the spines with brass javelins, hung contorted as in death rictus, asking mercy with their fright-colored eyes, seeking revenge with their panic-colored teeth. "Don't look broke to me." Jim ambled across the clanking chain, leaped to a turntable, surface vast as the moon, among frantic but forever spelled beasts. "Jim!" "Will, this is the only ride we haven't looked at." So Jim swayed. The lunatic carousel whirled, stirred atilt with his lean bulk. He strolled through brass forests amidst animal rusts. He swung astride a plum-dusk stallion. "Oh, boy, get!" A man rose from the machinery darkness. "Jim!" Reaching out from the shadows among the calliope tubes and moon-skinned drums, the man hoisted Jim, yelling out into the air, "Will! Help! Help!" Will leaped through the animals. The man smiled easily, welcomed him handily, swung him high beside Jim. They stared down at bright flame-red hair, bright flame-blue eyes, and rippling biceps. "Out of order," said the man. "Can't you read?" "Put them down," said a gentle voice. Hung high, Jim and Will glanced over at a second man standing tall beyond the chains. "Down," he said again, and they were carried through the brass forest of wild but uncomplaining brutes and set in the dust. "We were," said Will. "Curious?" The second man was tall as a lamp-post. His pale face, lunar pockmarks dinting it, cast light on those who stood below. His vest was the color of fresh blood. His eyebrows, his hair, his suit were licorice black, and the sun-yellow Jim, which stared from the tie-pin thrust in his cravat, was the same unblinking shade and bright crystal as his eyes. But in the instant, swiftly, with utter clearness, it was the suit which fascinated Will, for it seemed woven of boar-bramble, clock-spring hair, bristle, and a sort of ever-trembling, ever-glistening dark hemp. The suit caught light and stirred like a bed of black tweed thorns, interminably itching, covering the man's long body with emotion, so it seemed he should excruciate, cry out, and tear the clothes free. Yet here he stood, moon-calm, inhabiting his itched tweed suit, and watching Jim's mouth with his yellow eyes. He never looked once at Will. "The name is Dark." He flourished a white calling card. It turned blue. "Whisper," red. "Whisk." A green man dangled from a tree stamped on the card. "Flit," "Shh," "Dark." "And my friend with the red hair there is Mr. Cougar, of Cougar and Dark's." Flit, flick, shh. Names appeared, disappeared on the white square. Combined shadow shows, tick, wash. A mushroom witch stirred moldering herb pots. A cross-continental pandemonium theater company. He handed the card to Jim. It now read, "Our specialty, to examine, oil, polish, and repair Death Watch beetles." Calmly Jim read it, calmly. Jim put a fist into his copious and richly treasured pockets, rummaged, and held out his hand. On his palm lay a dead brown insect. "Here," Jim said, "fix this." Mr. Dark's exploded laugh. "Superb! I will." He extended his hand, his shirt sleeve pulled up. Bright purple, black, green, and lightning blue eels, worms, and Latin scrolls slid to view on his wrist. "Boy," cried Will, "you must be the tattooed man." "No," Jim studied the stranger, "the illustrated man. There's a difference." Mr. Dark nodded, pleased. "What's your name, boy?" "Don't tell him," thought Will, and stopped. Why not? He wondered. Why? Jim's lips hardly twitched. "Simon," he said. He smiled to show it was a lie. Mr. Dark smiled to show he knew it. "Want to see more?" "Simon." Jim would not give him the satisfaction of a nod. Slowly, with a great mouth working pleasure, Mr. Dark pushed his sleeve high to his elbow. Jim stared. The arm was like a cobra, weaving, bobbing, swaying to strike. Mr. Dark clenched his fist, wriggled his fingers, the muscles danced. Will wanted to run around and see, but could only watch, thinking, "Jim, oh Jim," for there stood Jim, and there was this tall man, each examining the other as if he were a reflection in a shop window late at night. The tall man's brambled suit, the shadow out now to color Jim's cheeks and storm over his wide and drinking eyes with a look of rain instead of the sharp cat green they always were. Jim stood like a runner who has come a long way, fever in his mouth, hands open to receive any gift, and right now it was a gift of pictures twitched in pantomime, as Mr. Dark made his illustrations jerk, cold-skinned, over his warm-pulsed wrist as the stars came out above, and Jim stared, and Will could not see it a long way off. The last of the town people went away toward town in their warm cars, and Jim said faintly, "Gosh," and Mr. Dark rolled down his sleeve. "Show's over, supper time. Carnival's shut up until 7. Everyone's out. Come back, Simon, and ride the merry-go-round when it's fixed. Take this card. Free ride." Jim stared at the hidden wrist and put the card in his pocket. "So long," Jim ran. Will ran. Jim whirled, glanced back, leaped, and for the second time of the hour vanished. Will looked up into the tree where Jim squirmed on a limb, hidden. He looked back. Mr. Dark and Mr. Cougar were turned away, busy with the merry-go-round. "Quick, Will!" "Jim, they'll see you! Jump!" Will jumped. Jim hauled him up. The great tree shook. A wind roared by in the sky. Jim held him clean, gasping among the branches. "Jim, we don't belong here. Shut up! Look!" whispered Jim. Somewhere in the carousel machinery there were taps and brass knockings, a faint squeal and whistle of calliope steam. What was on his arm, Jim? "A picture. Yeah, but what kind?" "It was," Jim shut his eyes. "It was a picture of a snake. That's it. Snake." But when he opened his eyes, he would not look at Will. "Okay, if you don't want to tell me." "I told you, Will. A snake. I'll get him to show it to you later. You want that?" "No," thought Will, "I don't want that." He looked down at the billion footprints left in the sawdust on the empty midway, and suddenly it was a lot closer to midnight than to noon. "I'm going home." "Sure, Will. Go on. Narrow mazes, old teacher ladies, lost lightning rod bags, lightning rod salesmen disappear, snake pictures dancing, unbroken merry-go-rounds. And you want to go home? Sure, old friend, Will. Go so long." Will started down the tree and froze. "All clear?" cried a voice below. "Clear," someone shouted at the far end of the midway. Mr. Dark moved not 50 feet away to a red control box near the merry-go-round ticket booth. He glared in all directions. He glared into the tree. Will hugged. Jim hugged the limb, tightening into smallness. Start up. With a pop, a bang, a jangle of reins, a lift and downfall, a rise and descent of brass, the carousel moved. But, thought Will, it's broke, out of order. He flicked a glance at Jim, who pointed wildly down. The merry-go-round was running, yes, but it was running backward. The small calliope inside the carousel machinery rattle-snapped, its nervous stallion shivering drums clashed its harvest moon cymbals, toothed its castanets, and throatily choked and sobbed its reeds, whistles, and baroque flutes. The music, Will thought, it's backwards too. Mr. Dark jerked about, glanced up as if he had heard Will's thought. A wind shook the trees in black tumults. Mr. Dark shrugged and looked away. The carousel wheeled faster, shrieking, plunging, going roundabout back. Now Mr. Cougar, with his flaming red hair and fire-blue eyes, was pacing the midway, making a last trek. He stood under their tree. Will could have let spit down on him. Then the calliope gave a particularly violent cry of foul murder, which made dogs howl in far countries, and Mr. Cougar, spitting, ran and leaped on the back-whirling universe of animals, who tail first, head last, pursued an endless circling night toward unfound and never-to-be-discovered destinations. Hands slapping brass poles, he flung himself into a seat where, his bristly red hair, pink face, and incredible sharp blue eyes, he sat silent, going back around, the music squealing swift back with him like insucked breath. The music, thought Will, what is it, and how do I know it's backside first? He hugged the limb, trying to catch the tune, then hum it forward in his head, but the brass bells, the drums hammered his chest, grabbed his heart so he felt his pulse reverse, his blood turned back in perverse thrust through all his flesh, so he was nearly shaken free to fall. So all he did was clutch, hang pale, and drink the sight of the backward-turning machine, and Mr. Dark, alert at the controls on the sidelines. It was Jim who first noticed the new thing happening, for he kicked Will once. Will looked over, and Jim nodded frantically at the man in the machine as he came around the next time. Mr. Cougar's face was melting like pink wax. His hands were becoming doll's hands. His bones sank away beneath his clothes then shrank down to fit his dwindling frame. His face flickered, going, and each time around he melted more. Will saw Jim's head shift, circling. The carousel wheeled a great black, drifting lunar dream. The horses thrusting, the music in-gassed after, while Mr. Cougar, as simple as shadows, as simple as light, as simple as time, got younger and younger and younger. Each time he wheeled to view, he sat alone with his bones, which shaped like warm candles burning away to tender years. He gazed serenely at the fiery constellations, the children-inhabited trees which went away from him, as he removed himself from them, and his nose diminished and his sweet wax ears reshaped themselves as small pink roses. He now no longer 40 when he had begun his back-spiral journey. Mr. Cougar was 19. Around with the reverse parade of horse, pole, music, man, become young man, fast rendered down to boy. Mr. Cougar was 17, 60, another time around under the sky and trees and Will whispering, Jim counting the times around, while the night air warmed to summer heat by friction of sun-metal brass. The passionate back-turned flight of beasts wore the wax doll down and washed him clean with still stranger musics until all ceased, all died away to stillness. The calliope shut up its brassworks, the ironmongery machines hissed off, and with a last faint whine like desert sands blown back up Arabian hourglasses, the carousel rocked on seaweed waters and stood still. The figure seated in the carved white wooden sleigh chair was very small. Mr. Cougar was 12 years old. No, Will Mouse shaped the word. No, Jim's did the same. The small shape stepped down from the silent world, its face in shadow and its hands newborn wrinkled pink held out in raw carnival lamplight. The strange man-boy shot his gaze up, down, smelling fright somewhere, terror and awe in his vicinity. Will balled himself tight and shut his eyes. He felt the terrible gaze shoot through the leaves like brown needle darts, pass on. Then rabbit running, the small shape lit off down the empty midway. Jim was first to stir the leaves aside. Mr. Dark was gone too in the evening hush. It seemed to take Jim forever to fall down to earth. Will fell after, and they both stood, clamorous with alarms, shaken by concussions of silent pantomime, blasted by events all the more numbing because they ran off into the night and unknown. And it was Jim who spoke from their mutual confusion and trembling as each held to the other's arm, seeing the small shadow rush, luring them across the meadow. Oh, Will, I wish we could go home. I wish we could eat. But it's too late. We got to see more, don't we? Lord, said Will miserably, I guess we do. And they ran together, following they didn't know what, on, out, and away, to who could possibly guess where. "19. Out on the highway, the last faint watercolors of the sun were gone beyond the hills, and whatever they were chasing was so far ahead as to be only a swift fleck, now shown in the lamplight, now set free, running into the dark. 28, gasped Jim. 28 times, the merry-go-round, sure. Will jerked his head. 28 times I counted. It went around back. Up ahead, the small shape stopped and looked back. Jim and Will ducked in by a tree and let it move on. It, thought Will. Why do I think it? He's a boy. He's a man. No, it has something. It has changed. That's what it is. They reached and passed the city limits, and swiftly jogging, Will said, Jim, there must be 2 people on that ride, Mr. Cougar and this boy, and no, I never took my eyes off him. They ran by the barber's shop. Will saw but did not see him. Sign in the window. He read but did not read. He remembered. He forgot. He plunged on. Hey, he's turned on Culpeper Street. Quick! They ran at a corner. He's gone. The street lay long and empty in the lamplight. Leaves blew on the hopscotch chalked sidewalks. Well, Miss Foley lives on this street. Sure, 4th house, but Jim strolled, casually whistling, hands in pockets, Will with him. At Miss Foley's house they glanced up. In one of the softly lit front windows someone stood looking out. A boy no more and no less than 12 years old. Will, cried Jim softly. That boy, her nephew? Nephew, heck, keep your head away. Maybe he can read lips. Walk slow to the corner and back. You see his face? The eyes, Will. That's one part of people that don't change. Young, old, 6 or 60. The boy's face, sure, but the eyes were the eyes of Mr. Cougar. No, yes, they both stopped to enjoy the swift pound of each other's heart. Keep moving, they moved. Jim held Will's arm tight, leading him. You did see Mr. Cougar's eyes, huh? When he held us up to crack our heads together? You did see the boy just off the ride? He looked right up near me, hid in the tree, and boy, it was like opening the door to a furnace. I'll never forget those eyes, and there they are now in the window. Turn around. Now let's walk back easy and nice and slow. We gotta warn Miss Foley what's hiding in her house, don't we? Jim, look, you don't give a darn about Miss Foley or what's in her house. Jim said nothing. Walking arm in arm with Will, he just looked over at his friend and blinked once, let the lids come down over his shiny green eyes and go up. And again Will had the feeling about Jim that he had always had about an old, almost forgotten dog. Sometime every year that dog, good for many months, just ran out into the world and didn't come back for days, and finally did limp back, all bird and scrawny and odorous of swamps and dumps. He had rolled in the dirty mangers and foul dropping places of the world simply to turn home with a funny little smile pinned to his muzzle. Dad had named the dog Plato, the wilderness philosopher, for you saw by his eyes there was nothing he didn't know. Returned, the dog would live in innocence again, thread patterns of grace for months, then vanish, and the whole thing would start over. Now, walking here, he thought he heard Jim whimper under his breath. He could feel the bristles stiffen all over him. He felt Jim's ears flatten, saw him sniff the new dark. Jim smelled smells that no one knew, heard ticks from clocks that told another time. Even his tongue was strange now, moving along his lower and now his upper lip as they stopped in front of Miss Foley's house again. The front window was empty. Going to walk up and ring the bell, said Jim. What, meet him face to face? My aunt's eyebrows will. We gotta check, don't we? Shake his paw, stare him in his good eye or some such, and if it is him, we don't warn Miss Foley right in front of him, do we? We'll phone her later, Dum. Up we go. Will sighed and let himself be walked up the steps, wanting but not wanting to know if the boy in this house had Mr. Cougar hid, but showing like a firefly between his eyelashes. Jim rang the bell. What if he answers? Will demanded. Boy, I'm so scared I could sprinkle dust. Jim, why aren't you scared? Why? Jim examined both of his untrembled hands. I'll be darned, he gasped. You're right, I'm not. The door swung wide. Miss Foley beamed out at them. Jim, Will, how nice. Miss Foley blurted. Will, you okay? Jim glared at him. Miss Foley laughed. Why shouldn't I be? Will flushed. All those darn carnival mirrors. Nonsense, I've forgotten all about it. Well, boys, are you coming in? She held the door wide. Will shuffled a foot and stopped. Beyond Miss Foley, a beaded curtain hung like a dark blue thunderclap shower across the parlor entry. Where the colored rain touched the floor, a pair of dusty small shoes poked out. Just beyond the downpour, the evil boy loitered. Evil? Will blinked. Why evil? Because. Because was reason enough. A boy, yes, and evil. Robert, Miss Foley turned, calling through the dark blue, always falling beads of rain. She took Will's hand and gently pulled him aside. Come meet two of my students. The rain poured aside. A fresh candy-pink hand broke through, all by itself as if testing the weather in the hall. Good grief, thought Will. He'll look me in the eye, see how merry-go-round himself moving on it back. I know it's printed on my eyeball like I've been struck by lightning. Miss Foley, said Will. Now a pink face stuck out through the dim, frozen necklaces of storm. We gotta tell you a terrible thing. Jim struck Will's elbow hard to shut him. Now the body came out through the dark, watery flow of beads. The rain shushed behind the small boy. Miss Foley leaned toward him, expectant. Jim gripped the elbow fiercely. He stammered, flushed, and spat out. Mr. Corsetti! Quite suddenly, clearly, he saw the sign in the barber's window. The sign seen, but not seen as they ran by. Closed on account of illness. Mr. Corsetti, he repeated, and added swiftly, he's dead. What? The barber? The barber, echoed Jim. See this haircut? Will turned, trembling, his hand to his head. He did it, and we just walked by there, and the sign was up, and people told us. What a shame. Miss Foley was reaching out to fetch the strange boy forward. I'm so sorry, boys. This is Robert, my nephew from Wisconsin. Jim stuck out his hand. Robert, the nephew, examined it curiously. What are you looking at? He asked. You look familiar, said Jim. Jim! Will yelled to himself. Like an uncle of mine, said Jim, all sweet and calm. The nephew flicked his eyes to Will, who looked only at the floor, afraid the boy would see his eyeballs whirl with the remembered carousel. Crazily, he wanted to hum the backward music. Now, he thought, face him. He looked up straight at the boy. And it was wild and crazy, and the floor sank away beneath, for there was the pink, shiny Halloween mask of a small, pretty boy's face, but almost as if holes were cut, where the eyes of Mr. Cougar shone out. Old, old eyes, as bright as the sharp blue stars of the light from those stars, taking 1,000,000 years to get there. And through the little nostrils cut in the shiny wax mask, Mr. Cougar's breath went in, steam came out, ice. And the Valentine candy tongue moved small behind those trim white candy kernel teeth. Mr. Cougar, somewhere behind the eye slits, went blink-click with his insect Kodak pupils. The lenses exploded like suns. They burnt chilly and serene again. He swiveled his glance to Jim. Blink-click. He had Jim flexed, focused, shot, developed, dried, filed away in dark. Blink-click. Yet this was only a boy standing in a hall with two other boys and a woman. And all the while Jim gazed steadily back, feathers unruffled, taking his own pictures of Robert. Have you boys had supper? Asked Miss Foley. We're just sitting down. We've got to go. Everyone looked at Will, as if amazed he didn't want to stick there forever. Jim, he stammered, your mom's home alone. Oh, sure, Jim said reluctantly. I know that. The nephew paused for their attention. When their faces turned, Mr. Cougar inside the nephew went silently blink-click, listening through the toy ears, watching through the toy charm eyes, wetting the doll's mouth with a Pekingese tongue. Join us later for dessert, huh? Dessert? I'm taking Aunt Willa to the carnival. The boy stroked Miss Foley's arm until she laughed nervously. Carnival? Cried Will, and lowered his voice. Miss Foley, I said I was foolish and scared myself, said Miss Foley. It's Saturday night, the best night for tent shows and showing my nephew the sights. Join us? Asked Robert, holding Miss Foley's hand. Later? Great, said Jim. Jim, said Will. We've been out all day. Your mom's sick. I forgot. Jim flashed a look that with filled with the purest snake poison. Flick. The nephew made an X-ray of both, showing them, no doubt, as cold bones were trembling in warm flesh. He stuck out his hand. "Tomorrow, then, meet you by the sideshows." "Swell!" Jim grabbed the small hand. "So long." Will jumped out the door, then turned with a last agonized appeal to the teacher. "Miss Foley?" "Yes, Will." "Don't go with that boy," he thought. "Don't go near the shows. Stay home. Oh, please." Then he said, "Mr. Corsetti's dead." She nodded, touched, waiting for his tears, and while she waited, he dragged Jim outside, and the door swung shut on Miss Foley and the pink small face with the lenses in it going blink-click, snapshotting two incoherent boys, and them fumbling down the steps in October dark while the merry-go-round started again in Will's head, rushing while the leaves in the trees above cracked and fried with the wind. Aside, Will sputtered, "Jim, you shook hands with him. Mr. Cougar, you're not going to meet him?" "It's Mr. Cougar, all right. Boy, those eyes. If I met him tonight, we'd solve the whole shooting match." "What's eating you, Will?" "Eating me." At the bottom of the steps now they tussled in fierce frantic whispers, glancing up at the empty windows where now and again a shadow passed. Will stopped. The music turned in his head. Stunned, he squinched his eyes. "Jim, the music the calliope played when Mr. Cougar got younger. Yeah? It was the funeral march, played backwards." "Which funeral march?" "Which, Jim? Chopin only wrote one tune, the funeral march." "But why play backward? Mr. Cougar was marching away from the grave, not toward it, wasn't he? Getting younger, smaller instead of older, and dropping dead?" "Willie, you're terrific." "Sure, but—" Will stiffened. "He's there, the window again. Wave at him. So long. Now walk and whistle something. No, not Chopin. For gosh sakes." Jim waved. Will waved. Both whistled, "Oh, Susanna." The shadow gestured small in the high window. The boys hurried off down the street. Two suppers were waiting in two houses. One parent yelled at Jim. Two parents yelled at Will. Both were sent hungry upstairs. It started at 7 o'clock. It was done by 7:03. Doors slammed, locks clacked, clocks ticked. Will stood by the door. The telephone was locked away outside. Even if he called, Miss Foley wouldn't answer. By now she'd be gone beyond town. Good grief, anyway, what could she say? Miss Foley, that nephew's no nephew? That boy's no boy? Wouldn't she laugh? She would. For the nephew was a nephew, the boy was a boy, or seemed such. He turned to the window. Jim, across the way, stood facing the same dilemma in his room. Both struggled. It was too early to raise the windows and stage whisper to each other. Parents below were busy growing crystal radio peach fuzz in their ears, alert. The boys threw themselves on their separate beds in their separate houses, probed mattresses for chocolate chunks put away against the lean years, and ate moodily. Clocks ticked. 9, 9:30, 10. The knob rattled softly. As Dad unlocked the door. "Dad," thought Will, "come in, we gotta talk," but Dad chewed his breath in the hall. Only his confusion, his always puzzled, half-bewildered face could be felt beyond the door. He won't come in, thought Will. Walk around, talk around, back off from the thing, yes, but come sit, listen? When had he? When would he ever? "Will," Will quickened. "Will," said Dad, "be careful." "Careful," cried Mother, coming from the hall. "Is that all you're going to say? What else?" Dad was going downstairs now. He jumps, I creep. How can you get two people together like that? He's too young, I'm too old. God, sometimes I wish we'd never— The door shut. Dad was walking away on the sidewalk. Will wanted to fling up the window and call. Suddenly Dad was so lost in the night. "Not me, don't worry about me, Dad," he thought. "Dad, stay in. It's not safe. Don't go." But he didn't shout. And when he softly raised the window, at last the street was empty, and he knew it would be just a matter of time before that light went on in the library across town. When rivers flooded, when the fire fell from the sky, what a fine place the library was, the many rooms, the books. With luck, no one found you. How could they? When you were off to Tanganyika in 98, Cairo in 1812, Florence in 1492? Careful. What did Dad mean? Did he smell the panic? Had he heard the music? Had he prowled near tents? No, not Dad ever. Will tossed a marble over at Jim's window. Tap, silence. He imagined Jim seated alone in the dark, his breath like phosphorus on the air, ticking away to himself. Tap, silence. This wasn't like Jim. Always before the window slid up, Jim's head popped out, right with yells, secret hissings, giggles, riots, rebel charges. "Jim, I know you're there." Tap, silence. Dad's out on the town, Miss Foley's with you-know-who, he thought. Good gosh, Jim, we gotta do something tonight. He threw a last small marble. Tap! It fell to the hushed grass below. Jim did not come to the window. Tonight, thought Will. He bit his knuckles. He lay back, cold, straight, stiff on his bed. 21. In the alley behind the house was a huge, old-fashioned pine-plank boardwalk. It had been there ever since Will remembered, since civilization unthinkingly poured forth the dull, hard, unresisting cement sidewalks. His grandfather, a man of strong sentiment and wild impulse, who let nothing go without a roar, had flexed his muscles in favor of this vanishing landmark, and with a dozen handymen had toted a good 40 feet of walk into the alley where it had lain like the skeleton of some indefinable monster through the years, baked by sun, lushly rotted by rains. The town clock struck 10. Lying abed, Will realized he had been thinking about grandfather's vast gift from another time. He was waiting to hear the boardwalk speak. In what language? Well, boys had never been known to go straight up to houses to ring bells to summon forth friends. They preferred to chunk dirt at clapboards, hurl acorns down roof shingles, or leave mysterious notes flapping from kites stranded on attic windowsills. So it was with Jim and Will. Late nights, if there were gravestones to be leapfrogged, or dead cats to be hurled down sour people chimneys, one or the other of the boys would prowl out under the moon and xylophone dance on that old hollow echoing musical boardwalk. Over the years they had tuned the walk, prying up an A board and nailing it here, lifting up an F board and pounding it back down there until the walk was as near onto being melodious as weather, and two entrepreneurs couldn't fashion it. By the tune threaded out, you could tell the night's venture. If Will heard Jim tromping hard on 7 or 8 notes of way down up the Suwannee River, he scrambled out knowing it was noon trail time on the creek leading to the river caves. If Jim heard Will go out leaping about like a scalded Airedale on the timbers and the tune remotely suggested marching through Georgia, it meant plums, peaches, or apples were ripe enough to get sick on out beyond town. So this night Will held his breath, waiting for some tune to call him forth. What kind of tune would Jim play to represent the carnival, Miss Foley, Mr. Cougar, and or the evil nephew? 10:15, 10:30, no music. Will did not like Jim sitting in his room thinking what? Of the mirror maze? What had he seen there? And seeing, what did he plan? Will stirred restively. Especially he did not like to think of Jim with no father between him and the tent shows and all that lay dark in the meadows, and a mother who wanted him around so very much he just had to get away, get out, breathe free night air, no free night waters, running toward bigger, freer seas. Jim, he thought, let's have the music, and at 10:35 it came. He heard, or thought he heard, Jim out in the starlight, leaping away up and coming flat down like a spring tomcat on the vast xylophone. And the tune, was or wasn't it like the funeral dirge played backwards by the old carousel calliope? Will started to raise his window to be sure, but suddenly Jim's window slid quietly up. He hadn't been down on the boards. It was just Will's wild wish that made the tune. Will started to whisper, but stopped, for Jim, without a word, scuttled down the drain pipe. Jim, Will thought. Jim all alone stiffened as if hearing his name. You're not going without me, Jim? Jim glanced swiftly up. If he saw Will, he made no sign. Jim, Will thought, we are still pals, smell things nobody else smells, hear things no one else hears, got the same blood, run the same way. Now this first time ever you're sneaking out, ditching me. But the driveway was empty. A salamander flicking the hedge, there went Jim. Will was out the window, down the trellis, and over the hedge before he thought, I'm alone. If I lose Jim, it's the first ever I'll be out alone at night too, and where am I going? Wherever Jim goes. Lord, let me keep up. Jim skimmed the dark owl like a mouse. After a mouse. Skimmed like a dark owl after a mouse. Will loped like a weaponless hunter after the owl. They sailed their shadows over October lawns, and when they stopped, there was Miss Foley's house. "22. Jim glanced back. Will became a bush behind a bush, a shadow among shadows, with no starlight rounds of glass, his eyes holding the image of Jim calling up a whisper toward the second-floor windows. Hey there, hey, good grief, thought Will. He wants to be slit and stuffed with broken mirror maze glass. Hey, called Jim softly. You! A shadow uprose on a dim-lit shade above. A small shadow. The nephew had brought Miss Foley home. They were in their separate rooms. Oh, Lord, thought Will. I hope she's safe home. Maybe, like the lightning-rod salesman, she... Hey! Jim gazed up with that funny, warm look of breathless anticipation he often had nights in summer at the Shadow Show window theater in that house a few streets over. Looking up with love, with devotion like a cat, Jim waited for some special dark mouse to run forth. Crouched now slowly, he seemed to grow taller, as if his bones were pulled by the thing in the window above, which now suddenly vanished. Will ground his teeth. He felt the shadow sift down through the house like a cold breath. He could wait no longer. He leaped forward. Jim! He seized Jim's arm. Will, what are you doing here? Jim, don't talk to him. Get out of here. My gosh, he'll chew and spit out your bones. Jim writhed himself free. Will, go home. You'll spoil everything. He scares me, Jim. What do you want from him? This afternoon in the maze, did you see something? Yes. For gosh sakes, what? Will grabbed Jim's shirt front, felt his heart bang under the chest bones. Jim! Let go. Jim was terribly quiet. If he knows you're here, he won't come out. Willie, if you don't let go, I'll remember when what? When I'm older, darn it, older. Jim spat. As if he was struck by lightning, Will jumped back. He looked at his empty hands and put one up to wipe the spittle off his cheek. Oh, Jim, he mourned, and he heard the merry-go-round motioning, gliding on black night waters, around and around, and Jim on a black stallion riding off and about, circling in a tree shadow, and he wanted to cry out, Look, the merry-go-round. You want it to go forward, don't you, Jim? Forward instead of back. And you on it, around once and you're 15, circling, then you're 16, 3 times more, and 19, music, and you're 20 off, standing tall. Not Jim anymore, still 13, almost 14, on the empty midway, with me small, me young, me scared. Will hauled off and hit him, Jim hard, on the nose. Then he jumped Jim, wrapped him tight, and toppled him, rolling down, yelling in the bushes. He slapped Jim's mouth, stuffed it, mashed it full of fingers to snap and bite at, suffocating the angry grunts and yells. The front door opened. Will crushed the air out of Jim, lay heavy on him, fisting his mouth tight. Something good stood on the porch. A tiny shadow scanned the town, searching for, but not finding Jim. But it was just the boy Robert, the friendly nephew, come almost casually forth, hands in pockets, whistling under his breath, to breathe the night air as boys do, curious for adventures that they themselves must make, that rarely happen by. Thrashed tight, mortally locked and bound to Jim staring up, Will was at the more shaken to see the normal boy, the airy glance, the unassuming poise, the small, easy self in which no man at all was revealed by streetlight. At any moment, Robert, in full cry, might leap to play with them. Tangled Agsock arms spark-snapped like pups in May. The whole thing end with them strewn in laughing tears on the lawn, the terror spent, the fear melted off in dew. A dream of nothing's quickly gone as such dreams go when the eye snaps wide. For there indeed stood the nephew, his face round, fresh, and cream smooth as a peach, and he was smiling down at the two boys, and he now saw locked limb and limb in the grass. Then swiftly he darted in. He must have run upstairs, scrabbled about, and hurtled down again. For suddenly, as the two boys out-thrashed, out-gripped, outraged each other, there was a rain of tinkling, rattling glitter on the lawn. The nephew leaped the porch rail and landed panther-soft, embedded in the shadow on the grass. His hands were delicious with stars. These he liberally sprinkled. They thudded, slithered, and winked at Jim's side. Both boys lay stricken by the rain of gold and diamond fire that pelted them. Help! Police! Cried Robert. Will was so shocked he let go Jim. Jim was so shocked he let go of Will. Both reached at the same time for the cold-strewn ice. Good grief, a bracelet, a ring, a necklace! Robert kicked. 2 trash cans at the curb fell thundering. A bedroom light above flicked on. Police! Robert threw one last spray of glitter at their feet, shut up his fresh peach smile like locking an explosion away in a box, and shot away down the street. Wait! Jim jumped. We won't hurt you. Will tripped him. Jim fell. The window upstairs opened. Miss Foley leaned out. Jim on his knees held a woman's wristwatch. Will blinked at a necklace in his hands. Who's there? She cried. Jim! Will, what's that you got? But Jim was running. Will stopped only long enough to see the window empty itself with a wail as Miss Foley pulled in to see her room. When he heard her full scream, he knew she had discovered the burglary. Running, Will knew he was doing just what the nephew wanted. He should turn back, pick up the jewels, tell Miss Foley what happened, but he must save Jim. Far back, he heard Miss Foley's new cries turn on more lights. Will Holloway, Jim Nightshade, night runners, thieves, that's us, thought Will. Oh, my Lord, that's us. No one will believe anything we say from now on. Not about the carnivals, not about the carousels, not about the mirrors or evil nephews, not about nothing. And so they ran. 3 animals in starlight, a black otter, a tomcat, a rabbit. Me, thought Will, I'm the rabbit, and he was white and much afraid. 23. They hit the carnival grounds at a good 20 miles an hour, give or take a mile, the nephew in the lead, Jim close behind and Will further back, gasping, shotgun blasts of fatigue at his feet, his head, his shirt. The nephew, running scared, looked back, not smiling. Fooled him, thought Will. He figured I wouldn't follow, figured I'd call the police, get stuck, not be believed, or run, hide. Now he's scared I'll beat the tar out of him, wants to jump on that ride and run around getting older and bigger than me. Oh, Jim, we gotta stop him, keep him young, tear his skin off. But he knew from Jim's running that there would be no help from Jim. Jim wasn't running after nephews, he was running toward free rides. The nephew vanished around a tent far ahead. Jim followed. By the time Will reached the midway, the merry-go-round was popping to life, and the pulse, the din, the squealing around of the music. The small, fresh-faced nephew rode the great platform in a swirl of midnight dust. Jim, 10 feet back, watched the horses leap, his eyes striking fire from the high-jumped stallion's eyes. The merry-go-round was going forward. Jim leaned at it. "Jim!" cried Will. The nephew swept from a sight borne around by the machine, drifted back again. He stretched out pink fingers, urging softly, "Jim!" Jim twitched 1 foot forward. "No!" Will plunged. He knocked, seized, held Jim. They toppled, they fell in a heap. The nephew's surprise whisked on in the darkness. 1 year older, 1 year older, thought Will, on the earth. 1 year taller, bigger, meaner. "Oh God, Jim, quick!" He jumped up, ran to the control box, the complete, complex mysteries of brass switch and porcelain covering and sizzling wires. He struck the switch, but Jim, behind, babbling, tore at Will's hands. "Will, you'll spoil it! No!" Jim knocked the switch Will back. Will spun and slapped his face. Each clinched the other's elbows, rocked, flailed. They fell against the control box. Will saw the evil boy, 1 year older still, glide around into the night. 5 or 6 more times around it. "He'll be bigger than the 2 of them. Jim, he'll kill us. Not me, no." Will felt a sting of electricity. He yelled, pulled back, hit the switch handle. The control box spat. Lightning jumped to the sky. Jim and Will, flung by the blast, lay watching the merry-go-round run wild. The evil boy whistled by, clinched to a brass tree. He cursed. He spat. He wrestled with wind, with centrifuge. He was trying to clutch his way through the horses, the poles, to the outer rim of the carousel. His face came, went. He clawed, he brayed. The control box erupted blue showers. The carousel jumped and bucked. The nephew slipped. He fell. A black stallion's steel hoof kicked him. Blood sprinted his brow. Jim hissed, rolled, thrashed, Will riding him hard, pressing him to the grass, trading yell for yell, both fright pale, heart ramming heart. Electric bolts from the switch flushed up in white stars and a gush of fireworks. The carousel spun 30, spun 40, Will let me up, spun 50 times. The calliope howled, boiled steam, ran ancient dry, then played nothing. Its keys gibbering, only as chitterings boiled up through the vents. Lightning unraveled itself of the sweat-outflung boys, delivered flame to the silent horse stampede to light their way around with the figure lying on the platform, no longer a boy, but a man, no longer a man, but more than a man, and even more, much more than that, around and around. He's, look, Will, gasped Jim, and began to sob because it was the only thing to do, locked down, nailed tight. "Oh God, Will, get up, we gotta make it run backward." Lights flashed on in the tents, but no one came out. Why not? Will thought crazily. The explosions, the electric storm. Do the freaks think the whole world's jumping through the midway? Where's Mr. Dark? In town? Up to no good? What? Where? Why? He thought he heard the agonized figure sprawled on the carousel platform drum, his heart super fast and slow, very fast, slow, incredibly fast, then as slow as the moon going down the sky on a white night in winter. Something on the carousel wailed faintly. "Thank God it's dark," thought Will. "Thank God I can't see. There goes someone. Here comes something. There, whatever it is, goes again. There. A bleak shadow on the shuddering machine tried to stagger up, but it was late, later still, very late, latest of all. Oh, very late. The shadow crumbled. The carousel, like the earth spinning, whipped away air, sunlight, sense, and sensibility, leaving only dark, cold, and age. In a final vomit, the switch box blew itself completely apart. All the carnival lights blinked out. The carousel slowed itself on the cold night wind. Will let Jim go. How many times, thought Will, did it go around? 60, 80, 90? How many times? Said Jim's face all nightmare, watching the dead carousel shiver and halt in the dead grass, a stopped world now which nothing, not their hearts, hands, or heads, could send back anywhere. They walked slowly to the merry-go-round, their shoes whispering. The shadowy figure lay on the near side, on the plank floor, its face turned away. One hand hung off the platform. It did not belong to a boy. It seemed a huge wax hand shriveled by fire. The man's hair was long, spidery white. It blew like milkweed in the breathing dark. They bent to see the face. The eyes were mummified shut. The nose was collapsed upon gristle. The mouth was a ruined white flower. The petals twisted into a thin wax sheath over the clenched teeth, through which faint bubbling sighed. The man was small inside his clothes, small as a child, but tall, strung out, and old, so very old. Not 90, not 100, no, not 110, but 120 or 130 impossible years old. Will touched. The man was cold as an albino frog. He smelled of moon swamps and old Egyptian bandages. He was something found in museums, wrapped in nicotine linens, sealed in glass. But he was alive, pulling like a babe, and shriveling unto death, fast, very fast before their eyes. Will was sick all over the side of the carousel. Then, falling against each other, Jim and Will sledge-hammered the insane leaves, the unbelievable grass, the unsubstantial earth with their numbed shoes, fleeing off down the midway. "24. Moths ticked up the heightened arc light, which swung abandoned above the crossroads. Below, in a deserted gas station in the midst of country wilderness, there was another ticking. In a coffin-sized phone booth, speaking to people lost somewhere across night hills, Two white-faced boys were crammed, holding on to each other at every flit of bat, each sliding of cloud-crossed stars. Will hung up the phone. The police and ambulance were coming. At first Jim had shout-whispered, wheezed at each other, pumping along, stumbling. They should go home, sleep, forget. No, they should take freight train west. No, for Mr. Cougar, if he survived, what they'd done to him. That old man, that old man, would follow them over the world until he found and tore them apart. Arguing, shivering, they ended up in a phone booth, and now saw the police car bouncing along the road, its siren moaning, with the ambulance behind. All the men looked out at the two boys, whose teeth chattered and the mouth flicked light. 3 minutes later they all advanced down the dark midway, Jim leading the way, talking, gibbering. He's alive, he's got to be alive. We didn't mean to do it, we're sorry. He stared at the black tents. You hear? We're sorry. Take it easy, boys, said one of the policemen. Go on. The two policemen in the midnight blue, the two interns, like ghosts, the two boys, made the last turn past the Ferris wheel and reached the merry-go-round. Jim groaned. The horses trampled the night air in mid-plunge. Starlight glittered on the brass poles, that was all. He's gone. He was here, we swear, said Jim. 150, 200 years old, and dying of it. Jim, said Will. The four men stirred uneasily. They must have taken him in a tent. Will started off. A policeman took his elbow. Did you say 150 years old? He asked Jim. Why not 300? Maybe he was. Oh, God. Jim turned, yelling. Mr. Cougar, we've brought help. Lights blinked on in the freak tent. The huge banners out front rumbled and lashed as arc lights flashed over them. The police glanced up. Mr. Skeleton, the Dust Witch, the Crusher, Vesuvio, the Lava Sipper, danced soft, big, painted, each on its separate flag. Jim paused by the rushing freak show entry. Mr. Cougar, he pleaded, you there? The tent flaps mouthed out a warm lion air. What? Asked the policeman. Jim read the moving flaps. They said yes. They said come in. Jim stepped through. The others followed. Inside they squinted through the crisscross tent pole shadows to the high freak platforms, and all the world's wandered aliens crippled a face of bone of mind waiting there. A rickety card table nearby, 4 men sat playing orange, lime green, sun-yellow cards printed with moon beasts and winged sun-symboled men. Here the akimbo skeleton, one might play a piccolo. Here the blimp, who could be punctured every night, pumped up at dawn. Here the midget known as the wart, who could be mailed parcel post dirt cheap. And next to him, an even littler accident of cell and time, a dwarf so small and perched in such a way you could not see his face behind the cards clenched before him in arthritic and tremulous oak-gnarled fingers. The dwarf, Will starred. Something about those hands, familiar, where, who, what, but his eyes snapped on. There stood Monsieur Guillotine, black tights, black long stockings, black hood overhead, arms crossed over his chest, stiff straight by his chopping machine. The blade high in the tent sky, a hungry knife, all flashes and meteor shine, much desiring to cleave space. Below in the head cradle, a dummy sprawled, waiting quick doom. There stood the crusher, all ropes and tendons, all steel and iron, all bone-monger, jaw-cruncher, horseshoe taffy-puller, and there the lava sipper, Vesuvio of the chafed tongue of the scalded teeth, who spun scores of fireballs up, hissing in a Ferris of flame which streaked shadows along the tent roof. Nearby, in booths, another 30 freaks watched the fires fly until the lava sipper glanced, saw intruders, and let his universe fall. The suns drowned in a water tub, steam billowed, all froze in their tableau. An insect stopped buzzing. Will glanced swiftly. There on the biggest stage, the tattooed needle poised like a blowgun dart in a rose-crusted hand, stood Mr. Dark, the illustrated man. The picture crowds flooded raw upon his flesh. Stripped bare to the navel, he had been stinging himself, adding a picture to his left palm with his dragonfly contraption. Now the insect droned dead in his hand he wheeled. But Will stared beyond him, cried, There he is, there's Mr. Cougar. The police, the interns quickened. Behind Mr. Dark sat the electric chair. In his chair sat a ruined man, last seen strewn, wheezing, in a collapse of bones and albino wax on a broken carousel. Now he was erected, propped, strapped in this device full of lightning power. That's him! He was dying! The blimp ascended to his feet. The skeleton spun about tall. The wart flea hopped to the sawdust. The dwarf let fall his cards and flirted his now mad, now idiot eyes ahead, around, over. I know him, thought Will. Oh, God, what have they done to him? The lightning rod salesman! That's who it was, squeezed tight, smashed small, convulsed by some terrible nature into a clenched fist of humanity, the seller of lightning rods. But now 2 things happened with beautiful promptitude. Monsieur Guillotine cleared his throat, and the blade above in the carnival sky, like a homing hawk, scythed down. Whisper, whisk, slither, thunder, rush, wham! The dummy head, chop cut, fell, and falling looked like Will's own head, own face destroyed. He did not want to run, lift the head, turn it to see if it held its own profile. But how could you ever dare to do that? Never, never in a billion years could one empty that wicker basket. The second thing happened. A mechanic working at the back of an upright, glass-fronted coffin booth released a tripwire. This made a last cog click within the machinery under the sign, Mi Tarot. the dust witch. The wax woman's figure within the glass box nodded her head and fixed the boys with her pointing nose as the boys passed, leading them in. Her cold wax hand brushed the dust of destiny on a ledge within the coffin. Her eyes did not see. They were sewn shut with laced black widow web, dark threads. A waxworks bright, good and proper she was, and the policeman beamed, viewing her, and strolled on, and beamed at Monsieur Guillotine for his act too in moving. The police were relaxing now, and seemed not to mind being called late on a jolly venture into a rehearsing world of acrobats and seedy magicians. Gentlemen, Mr. Dark and his mob of illustrations surged forward on the pine platform, a jungle beneath each arm, an Egyptian viper scrolled on each bicep. Welcome! You're just in time. We're rehearsing all our new acts. Mr. Dark waved, and strange monsters gaped their fangs from his chest. A cyclops with a navel for a squinted moron eye twitched on his stomach as he strode. Lord, thought Will, is he bringing that crowd with him, or is the crowd pulling him along by his skin? From all the creaked platforms, from the muffled sawdust, Will felt the freaks wheel and fix their eyes enchanted as they were interns and police by this illustrated throng of humanity that in one agglomerative move dominated and filled the immediate air and tense sky with silent shoutings for attention. Now part of the wasp-needle tattooed population spoke. It was Mr. Dark's mouth over and above this calligraphic explosion, this railroad accident of monsters and tumult upon his sweating skin. Mr. Dark chanted forth the organ tones from his chest. His personal electric blue-green populations trembled, even as the real freaks in the sawdust tent floor trembled, even as, hearing their most secret marrow, Jim and Will trembled and felt more freak than the freaks themselves. Gentlemen, boys! We've just perfected the new act. You'll be the first to see, cried Mr. Dark. The first policeman, his hand casually nested to his pistol holster, squinted up at that vast corral of booths and beings. This boy said, the illustrated man barked aloud. The freaks leaped into a frolic of shock, then calmed as the carnival owner continued with great ease, patting and soothing his own illustrations, which somehow patted and soothed the freaks. But what did he see? Boys always scare themselves at sideshows, eh? Run like rabbits when the freaks pop out. But tonight, especially tonight, the policeman glanced beyond the erector set papier-mâché relic constricted in the electric chair.